Now I would like to introduce our speaker. Arlene Karole is a certified healthcare professional, CHCP, a lifelong learner and educator. She enjoys journaling. She is the director of the Office of Academic Engagement, Education, and Communications in the Department of Cardiology at Northwell Health. Arlene serves as an adjunct assistant professor at St. John's University in New York City. Based on her personal experience, her book is dedicated to helping others become self-aware and empowered by taking charge of their breast cancer diagnosis. She is active with SHARE, the National Breast Cancer Organization, a member of the National Consortium of Breast Centers, NCBC, and on the National Consortium of Breast Centers Conference Survivorship Planning Subcommittee. Arlene has extensive experience working with large health systems and national nonprofits. She has a master's degree in health services administration from Central Michigan University. And I included her email address in the agenda, but for anyone who did not get it, we won't send it to you again. Okay, so now, Arlene, we're ready.
Wonderful. I want to thank everyone for sharing, where they're at in their journey. And I want to thank you to share, for this wonderful opportunity to, share my personal experiences with breast cancer. And certainly I want to thank you to the Queen's Group facilitators, Gwen and Rita, as well for the invitation to share a little bit about my journey in hopes to make yours a little easier. So I am going to turn off my video and I'm going to share my screen and my slides. We have a couple of videos, a couple of poll questions to be a little bit more engaging, and hopefully all the technical things will work out. But we've got Alicia here to help us just in case. So here we go. So again, I want to just welcome you and thank you so much for being here this evening. I want to just share a quick disclaimer. In this webinar, I will be sharing my own personal experiences and my journey with breast cancer. I do not make any recommendations except for one, and that's always consult your doctors. I want to also wish everyone a very happy New Year 2022. And I hope that this year we all enjoy great health and peace and prosperity, and that we are filled with new dreams and new hopes that are realized. My background, as Gwen and Rita shared, is in education, certified healthcare professional, and my master's degree in health science administration, a director at Northwell Health. And I also am very active with volunteering for SHARE and the National Consortium of Breast Centers. And we have a wonderful conference coming up in this year in March, and I'm looking forward to participate in that. I'm very involved with community activities, speaking at events, active on social media, and writing for various publications. And today I put together a few webinar objectives, and we want to review the 7 steps to own and take charge of your diagnosis, to recognize what part we can play as patients in owning and healing, in owning our health and in mind, body, and spirit, and also identify organizations that provide possible resources you may need, as well as describe habits to help you live your best life with a chronic disease. A little bit about the book. It is a candid collection of information and resources that I came upon along my journey with breast cancer. And how the book came about really is my breast friend, and that's B-R-E-A-S-T, friend Anita, and my beloved mom. From my initial diagnosis, they said, Arlene, make sure you take a lot of notes. And I said, I'm sure it will be fine. We won't need a lot of notes, but okay. So I brought along a couple of sticky notes, that's the cover of the front book, and a pen. And so it started out with just a few sticky notes. And then I was headed to so many doctor's appointments and so many tests that I started to take sheets of paper and start jotting down information on that. And then it all got so overwhelming, I put it in a notebook. And finally, I said, you know what? I'm going to have to type all this up into one document. And so it was just literally 2 weeks before my surgery. I was sitting down at the computer and I realized two things as I was typing. Number one, I was headed for a mastectomy in 2 weeks of my right breast because I did in fact have breast cancer. I was diagnosed initially with DCIS. And two, I just happened to look down at the computer at the bottom of the screen and it said I had written 63,000 words. And I thought, wow, okay. And I thought, what do I do with all of this information? So I had called a really good friend of mine, Alexandra, and I said to her, you know, Alexandra, I've just written 63,000 words, you know, what should I do with this? And she said, send me a couple of chapters or pages. And I did. And then she said to me, you know, she had just been diagnosed that year before with diabetes. And she said to me, Arlene, I had found a book that if it wasn't for that book, I would have never made it through my first year. And what I'm reading is great advocacy, and you really need to break this down and write a book. And that's how this came to be, Just Diagnosed. And I love this quote as I open each chapter and close each chapter with a quote. There are so many quotes that resonated with me through my journey. And I always say, you know, see what inspires you along your journey as well. And this one in particular was, if there's a book that you want to read, but it hasn't been written yet, then you must write it. So that's what I did. This is a video I just want to play. It's a couple of minute video. It gives you a little bit more information about my journey, and then we'll get back to some slides. And hopefully this will go smoothly. So here we go. Hi, I'm Arlene Karole, the author of Just Diagnosed Breast Cancer, What to Expect, What to Know, and What to Do Next. And I wrote this book to share my experience with you to make your journey much easier than mine was. It is a roadmap of how to navigate your diagnosis. I have a lovely family, and there was no real history of breast cancer in the family. Prior to my having just been diagnosed with breast cancer, I have a really active and busy job. I was heading to the gym, trying to eat right. When I went to the gynecologist for this slight little pinprick on my right breast, I never thought of cancer. I didn't frankly know what it was. But certainly the furthest thing from my mind was cancer, or even the idea of the removal of a body part. That really brought life to an extreme sudden halt. It's a devastating diagnosis, and I didn't know, frankly, as I was in the midst of planning for my 50th birthday, if I in fact would make it to my 50th birthday. It's a terrible feeling of being alone. There was no one that I felt comfortable speaking with. I felt a sense of embarrassment. I mean, it's a very intimate part of your body. And the fact is, I didn't know anybody with breast cancer at the time, so I had no one to speak to. I was looking for someone like me to guide me, to share with me their experience, other women who are going through what I was going through. And there was no one to do that. And frankly, while my doctors were phenomenal, the breast cancer doctor's office is literally like a revolving door of breast patients. And what might be new to us, the words mammography, the words ultrasound, the words oncology, the words mastectomy or metastasize, the fact is, they're not taking the time, nor do they have the time to really sit down with you and really talk you through this. So I was really now on a journey to find other women who have had my experience and to also do my own research. There was no book that I had to guide me. I want this book to really be to others what I could not find and what I did not have. So this is certainly not a clinical book on breast cancer. However, it is a book that is going to help you on your journey. It has resources, definitions, it has checklists, it has forms, and the 7 steps to help you own your diagnosis, and to also know and to share that you are not alone, that there are many others with breast cancer, and you just have to be open and speak about it, and know that on the other side, people will be there like I am here as what I coined myself now, a breast friend to others. You will eventually be a breast friend to others as well. So that was a little bit about my journey. And what I'd like to do now really quickly, and Alicia's going to launch the poll, is I'd just like to ask everyone where, and I think we kind of answered a little bit of this in the beginning, but where along are you in your journey? Again, just diagnosed, undergoing treatment, 5 years out from your diagnosis, or other? Okay, great. Thank you, Alicia. Okay, great. So thank you for answering and being involved with the poll. So the 7 steps to own and take charge of your diagnosis. It was initially, I was feeling a little bit of a pinprick in my right breast, and I thought, wow, something doesn't feel right. And so I had, went to the doctors, and my gynecologist had actually sent me over to a breast surgeon. And I always say that if you feel something, do something about it, right? And in New York, we have the saying, if you see something, say something. And I feel this way about listening to your bodies. And, just make sure you're listening to your inner voice, your gut instinct. In fact, 3 different tests within just a few months period said everything was fine. But yet I was getting this little uncomfortable pinprick feeling, literally the tip of a pin in my right breast. And so 2 mammograms showed normal, as well as an ultrasound. And it was walking out of my breast surgeon's office, I said to her, I looked back and I said, I'm telling you, something doesn't feel right. And she said, Arlene, it's fine. And I looked back one last time and I said, if it's fine, I'm going to walk out the door, but I'm telling you, something is not right. And it was in that moment, she said, okay, wait, if you don't need an authorization, we will get you an MRI. And it was the next week or 2, I had gotten an MRI, and the MRI lit up and it flagged what was DCIS. And so further down the road, we then did 2 tests, 2 breast needle biopsies, and those came back confirming the extreme extent of the DCIS. It was a lot of it, about 9 centimeters. But then she said to me, but unfortunately, those 2 breast needle biopsies didn't pick up the fact that I already had invasive cancer. However, not knowing that, I chose to have a mastectomy because I didn't want to wait and see. And looking back, listening to your body, going to the doctors and asking questions really allowed me to own my diagnosis. And just so you know, on my website, I'm offering for free both the appointments form and a full list of questions that you also may ask at your doctors. You want to be prepared. When we go to our doctors, we might have a 20-minute window, before, we're in and we're out of there. And you really want to come with the right questions. So, whether it's questions as to what kind of treatment or surgical options do I have, or even should I pick up my prescriptions before surgery? Do I need a home health aide, physical therapy after? These are all questions that you really need to prepare for before surgery. So it's really important to listen to your body and go to the doctors and ask questions. The next poll I just want to ask is, how did you identify you may have had an issue or breast cancer? And Alicia's going to launch that poll. Was it by chance going to the doctor? Was something didn't feel right? Or was it found on an annual routine exam? Okay, thanks, Alicia. So that's really interesting. It's really split almost evenly between all three, which is really interesting. So thank you for sharing. And then one other poll coming up. The next one is, which doctor identified there was an issue or breast cancer? Alicia will just launch that. Thank you. Was it a gynecologist? Was it your primary care doctor? Was it a breast surgeon or other? Okay, great. All right. Thank you, Alicia. Thanks for that. And those are the results. And we could talk a little bit about this at the end too during the Q&A. So thank you for sharing that. So a couple of other steps to own and take charge of your diagnosis is you definitely want to reach out for help. You don't want to go it alone. In the beginning, I knew no one with breast cancer, or so I thought, until I really started to open up and talk with other women and men. I wanted to know what kind of breast cancer they had, what type of surgeries they had and treatments they had chosen, and how they're doing now post-surgery. And initially I felt embarrassed. It's a very intimate disease, not to downplay other kinds of cancer like lung cancer or something, but it is a very intimate part of our body. But as I found, as I know you have, and I'm sure you will in the future, for those of us who are still going under treatment, if you open up, you will find unconditional love and support on the other side. And also make sure you take notes. Again, it was my breast friend, Anita, and mom who really got me to take notes. And those notes became invaluable in helping me to keep track of the tremendous amount of information that was coming my way. It really allowed me to compare the information from one doctor's appointment to another and help me to further assess my options, better understand my diagnosis, and as well be prepared to ask the doctor and get their opinions as well. And in the book, one thing that I do is I include a notes section at the back of each chapter and then action items at the bottom of each page. So it almost is like a workbook that you could take with you to have all that information in one place. And unlike me having it initially scattered all over, it's really a way to really keep track of all of the information that is coming at you. Also, I always say get copies of your medical records and bring someone with you. So whether it's your MRI reports or x-rays or pathology slides or CDs, get your medical records and understand the terminologies and research the words that are on the reports. And then you go back to your doctor and talk through it with them as well. And it's important because, again, it's a way to further really own and get control of a situation that initially starts out seemingly uncontrollable. And also, if you go for a second opinion, you'll likely need to send this information ahead of time or have the medical office send it for you to the next doctor. And I will say that often by the time my doctors called me, I had already had the information. So I always say, be proactive in your own care. And again, own your diagnosis and don't let it own you. It's also very important to bring someone with you, whether it's a friend or a family member or coworker or someone else, you trust, bring them with you. This person will be someone to help think for you, as you very well, I know I was overwhelmed and with varying emotions of hope and anxiety, it's important to have someone there. And also, she asked the questions that I didn't think to ask. I was too exhausted to think about, or too scared at times to hear the answers to. And so I always say, bring someone with you. And also research, research, research. Again, research the terminologies and your tests. Talk to your doctors asking for further clarification about what options are available to you. Again, I was overwhelmed with a myriad of terminologies that were completely new to me. And there's a lot of information out there. And while most of it is very good, there's some that's not. So, I had come across many resources I'll share in the slides ahead, excellent resources, including books and videos and blogs and websites and podcasts. But always make sure that when you're doing your research, that the information is obviously from reputable organizations and that it's based in science and evidence-based. And while our healthcare providers are amazing and they're excellent, they don't take the time to explain everything. So doing this research gave me a sense of control and helped me to, again, further own my diagnosis, be better informed, and be prepared for the difficult decisions ahead of me that I faced, because ultimately you're going to have to decide, what you'd like to do. So organizations like SHARE, excellent information. They have these wonderful educational programs, support groups, tools and resources. Susan G. Coleman was very helpful when I was researching information. Again, great resources. I came across breastcancer.org. This is a website. It has a forum that you can actually join to ask questions and share your experiences. The National Cancer Institute, and also the NCCN. That's where they have the evidence-based guidelines that are used for every kind of treatment. So for instance, for DCIS, which I discussed with my doctor, the options, I had kind of reconfirmed my options, which were active surveillance, a mastectomy, a lumpectomy with radiation, and so forth. So these are additional great, resources that you can go to. As again, this quote is in my book and it resonates so strongly with me, and I hope it does for you, because early on in my diagnosis, I realized that we cannot relegate or delegate our decisions to others. We must become knowledgeable about our initial diagnosis and beyond. And it was in this action step of seeking knowledge that was the beginning of taking control and owning my diagnosis. And I realized too that I had choices regarding my attitude and approach to my healthcare decisions, which ultimately are ours to make, and we will have to live with for a lifetime. And I just love this quote by Viktor Frankl: everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. And as we play a part as patients in our healing, health, and wellness, I came across this quote. And a priority in our healthcare organizations is to address population health in the communities in which they serve. Certainly that's true of nonprofits, hospitals, and such. And they want to promote health and prevention of disease. And I feel as patients in these communities, we too need to be an empowered culture, if you will, and we need to take accountability for our own health and wellness and own our diagnosis. It was in fact through my research that I serendipitously came across much information that really was not even directly related to breast cancer. And just as the global pandemic has made us look inwards, hearing those three words, you have cancer, you have breast cancer, is jarring, but it also helped me make changes, and to choose better lifestyles. I have since reevaluated changed my diet. Nothing's ever perfect, but, my exercise regime and my lifestyle choices, are more focused on health and wellness every day and not just when we're getting sick. And again, I found many excellent resources that I'm going to share with you in the next couple of slides And I also came across this Indian proverb, this quote I really love, and it's, everyone is a house with 4 rooms, a physical, a mental, emotional, and a spiritual. Most of us tend to live in one room most of the time, but unless we go into every room every day, if only to keep it aired, we are not a complete person. And so it was early on in my diagnosis, I came across this article, this blog on the Cancer Research, UK blog, and it was referencing a little bit about Angelina Jolie and, what causes people to get breast cancer. And it haunted me because we have no breast cancer in the family. I don't have the BRCA gene. We live well into our 80s and 90s and have pretty good genes and genetics. And what was unnerving is the fact, just the second sentence, and you can, again, go to these articles in full, and all these, these slides have links so you can read everything, in full. But it said most breast cancers arise from genetic damage that accumulates over a person's lifetime. That's why age is the biggest risk factor. And I started to think about, why would my genes get damaged? How does that happen? And so it was that when I started to research, different foods I was eating and different things, lifestyle, it was that chapter 5, again, another who knew, as I call them in the book, that I'd be writing a chapter called, Are We a Product of What We Eat, Our Environment, and Our Lifestyle Choices? Because I started to realize, just as we take control of a breast cancer diagnosis, we also need to make choices and take control of our health. And there are so many things that we do that are great and maybe not so great. For instance, we know that smoking can cause lung cancer, but people choose to smoke anyway. We know that the sun in the summertime feels great and getting a tan, but we know that long-term exposure can accelerate aging and increase risk for developing skin cancer. And certainly stress, while we know it's not good for us, we sometimes have to juggle priorities, advancing our careers, raising children, managing a home. But we know that stress left unchecked can contribute to many health problems, such as high blood pressure, heart disease, obesity, and diabetes. And so it was that as I was doing my research, I had come across this quote by Dr. Mark Hyman, which I really loved. And he said, there's no such thing as junk food. There's junk and there's food. As I started to research, sugar and dairy and, inflammation, all of these words start to come up. And I started to learn more about them, pesticides and refined foods and all of that and more. And so the question that I have, this last poll question, is, since your diagnosis, have you been engaged in or changed any lifestyle behaviors? And Alicia's going to launch that poll for us. Thank you, Alicia. That's great. That's great. Okay, thank you. So the results are split. Diet, exercise is the second, mindfulness, and other. So thank you so much for sharing that information. And the next slide, I'm going to, again, try to make this video work. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, go to YouTube, and then just hang on. And this was a really interesting video. And this is the last video. I had at one point, after my 3 surgeries and a breast tattoo, that's a whole nother story, but I had at one point, I was diagnosed with a high CEA marker, and I'm not going to get into those details. But when I went for what's called a PET scan, I was asking the nurse about what the PET scan is and what it actually does. And what a PET scan is, it's radioactive glucose, which is a form of sugar that's basically injected into your vein. You sit there for about an hour till it circulates, and then you go into this PET scan. And the idea behind it, as you'll hear from Dr. Sophia Lund, is that cancer cells show up brighter in this PET scan because they are more active. And they're more active because basically the cancer cells take up more glucose sugar than normal cells do. So when used with a PET scan, the radioactive glucose sugar helps find cancer cells in the body. And I'm going to play this video. It's a 10-minute video. I'm just going to play 2 minutes of it because I just think it was so impactful for me, because after my PET scan, I went to look for more information. And this is one of the videos that came across.
I love candy. Does anyone else like candy? A lot of you. Well, so do cancer cells. Cancer cells love sugar. As many of you know, cancer remains the second leading cause of death in the United States, which means we still need better therapeutics for our cancer patients. Today, I'd like to tell you about an exciting new approach to cancer therapy based on sugar metabolism. We've actually known for a long time that cancer cells love sugar. Almost 100 years ago, in 1924, a famous German scientist and Nobel laureate named Otto Warburg observed that cancer cells eat a lot more sugar than normal cells. So this observation that cancer cells love sugar is known as the Warburg effect. And the Warburg effect tells us that normal cells can stop after just one piece of candy, but cancer cells can't stop eating candy. And we do take advantage of the Warburg effect for diagnosis of cancer through PET imaging. Here's a PET scan of a patient with pancreatic cancer. The patient was given radioactively labeled glucose, which lights up when it concentrates in an organ. The pancreas normally doesn't light up because it normally doesn't like to eat so much sugar. But in this case, the patient has cancer cells in the pancreas. It's eating up all the sugar, concentrating it, and causing it to light up in the PET scan, and we're able to diagnose the patient. So it's good that...
Okay. Can everyone see? Alicia, can we see my screen again?
Yep.
Okay, great. So, I'll look forward to hear your comments on that video during our Q&A, but certainly when I heard this video, it was a little bit shocking, right? Because, certainly now when we go to eat certain foods, I learned what the comment was: ignorance is bliss, right? Because now when we make decisions to eat certain foods, we sometimes, hesitant, do we really want to eat that as good as it looks, that cupcake or something? So just something to think about. And so again, as patients in our healing, health and wellness, mind, body, and spirit, I had come across these different articles, breastcancer.org, I had mentioned earlier, again, as well, a great resource. And it talks about, again, these are links to the full article. These are just little excerpts. Diet is thought to be partly responsible for 30 to 40% of all cancers, but diet alone is unlikely to be the cause of the cure. It discusses, physical activity, a healthy diet, healthy weight. This other article on nutrition, it talks about eating well and giving your body the nutrients it needs. This is an article from Memorial Sloan Kettering, and this actually references eating well during your breast cancer treatment can help you heal after surgery. Exercise is important for people with cancer, less fatigue, boosting your energy, and it can strengthen your immune system. And so that is a great article as well. And then I came across this article too, the World Cancer Research Fund. It discusses how diet, nutrition, and again, physical activity, affect the risk of breast cancer. And this is a report analyzed by 119 studies from around the world, comprising of more than 12 million women and over 260,000 cases of breast cancer. So that is a really interesting read as well. And as Gwen and Rita had asked from a recent meeting, the topic of how to live with a chronic disease came up, and I'll touch upon that in a couple of slides as we move forward. But again, you know, there's a lot we can do to help ourselves in making healthy choices by educating ourselves. And this is a website that I came across early on. It's the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. And it's a leading revolution in medicine, putting new focus on health and compassion. They combine the cloud of expertise of more than 12,000 physicians with the dedicated actions of more than 175,000 members across the United States and the world. And the little arrow addressing chronic diseases, they are dramatically changing the way doctors treat chronic diseases such as diabetes, heart disease, obesity, and cancer. And this is, again, a really amazing website with so much information. Also, I came across the Environmental Working Group. Again, their mission is to empower you with breakthrough research, to make informed choices, and to live a healthy life and a healthy environment. Another great resource. And when I was going through all of this, I recalled some information I had actually came across many years earlier that I had archived in my bookcase. And Dr. Kelly Turner had actually, she's the founder of a Radical Remission Project. She came across these cancer patients who actually had a remission even when conventional medicine had failed. And so she took a trip, a year's trip, 10 months throughout the globe, different countries, and she interviewed different holistic healers and cancer survivors about their healing practices and their techniques, studying over, you know, thousands of cases. And as I was reading this, I was like, oh my gosh, wow, because I had been finding the same things, as you can see from all these slides and all this information all along. And she had identified 9 common themes that these patients engaged in taking a proactive ownership of their own care and changing behaviors and helped cure themselves. And those were changing your diet, taking control of your health, again, owning your diagnosis, as I've been sharing, following your intuition. Again, that pinprick initially for me made me think, something doesn't feel right. And also embracing social support. And that's my best friend, Anita. And this is a great book. And this is just a few of what she points out, but it's a really interesting read. And I found it really helpful. And then just to touch upon what Gwen and Rita had asked, you know, living with a chronic disease, as I found these next couple of pieces of information, Harvard Health Publishing, it kind of was very similar to everything we've just been talking about. And, you know, the 10 steps for coping with a chronic condition. The more you know about your condition, the better equipped you'll be to understand it. So really seek out knowledge about your condition. If it's diabetes or a heart condition or cancer, learn about it. And also, again, here it says, and these are just excerpts from the actual, you know, full document, which is a link here provided there. It says, you know, take responsibility for your own care. And one way to do this is listen to your body. And also, part of the treatment for almost any chronic condition involves lifestyle changes and investing the time and energy to make healthy changes, you know, to help you feel better and live longer. And look for a support group in your area and talk with people who have, you know, been through what you're facing. Also, another article, living with a chronic illness, dealing with feelings. You know, stress can make it harder for you, and you want to learn how to cope with stress. And they note in this article, you know, whether it's going for a walk or reading a book, you know, anything that, you know, would help, you know, kind of ease that stress. And then living with a chronic disease, this article by Healthline, Battling the Stress of Living with Chronic Illness. Again, this is just a small excerpt from the article. Serving as the day-to-day manager of your own health may help you gain a sense of control and improve your quality of life. And just a couple of quick resources before we wrap up. We just have a few more slides. It's really important, just like, we talked a little bit about healthcare organizations earlier on, and, just on prevention and such. Healthcare organizations also have interdisciplinary plan of care teams. So when you're going into surgery and such, usually a nurse will initiate this, but they will include you, the patient, the family, and all clinicians relevant to your diagnosis. And one thing that was really, I became aware early on is not only just having my breast surgeon or my gynecologist initially, but, really look for people to help you get through. So I was very active in my church. I had a prayer group pray with me the week before my surgery. I had a really difficult recovery and really difficult going through surgery, and it was so terrifying, but that was really helpful. Also, maybe seek out a dietitian, a physical therapist. After my surgery, my first surgery, I literally couldn't lift my hand over my arm for months. And so it took 40 sessions of physical therapy. I had a really difficult recovery to get my arm over my head and get things working again. So also a patient navigator. This is a resource in the hospital or clinical setting. You should ask for them, a mind-body therapist. Just a care team, in addition to your doctors. It's very important to have that full comprehensive support. And then just some resources, as I was writing this and going through this, I started to think, wow, if someone needed a second opinion, that could be costly, or just even a first opinion. And I was employed, and I was also afforded disability and insurance. It took me 6 weeks to, really recuperate, and then many more months and years, frankly. But I started to think about people who might not have the financial resources or other resources. So this is a very short list. It's more in the book, but just of some amazing resources that I came across. The Pink Fund, the Donna Fund, they help with financial support during your diagnosis. Also, these are organizations that provide transportation. Angel Flight East operates, in the East Coast, as you can see down below. Again, these links are also embedded here. Corporate Angel Network. And then I came across a resource that's non-financial, non-transportation, but they're called Wigs and Wishes. And Martino is an amazing owner of Wigs and Wishes, and they actually help individuals battling cancer with free wigs and such. And then in the last slide or two, these 3 videos, we're not going to play them, but the links are here, so you can watch them at a later time. It was a removal of a body part of 49 years. I was turning 50 when I had my mastectomy. I really didn't have any prior surgeries, and I had tremendous anxiety. And I was so scared. I was terrified, frankly, of not waking up. And it was at 3 o'clock in the morning. I'd woken up one night just weeks before surgery, and I was researching the words meditation and anxiety. And I came across this book by Peggy Huddleston. It's called Prepare for Surgery and Heal Faster. And it's 5 steps on how to prepare for surgery using mind-body techniques. And she has an amazing CD that helped me really relax and kind of get control of myself and the anxiety. And that was a really helpful book. Also, I found on the John Hopkins Kimmel Cancer Center, there's a 40-minute free yoga nidra video. Again, very, very calming, very helpful. And I still use it today, frankly. And then, this is, I had 3 surgeries and a tattoo of an areola. I always thought that maybe in my lifetime I'd get a tattoo of a butterfly or something, but I never thought I'd actually be getting one of an areola. So this is a really interesting video of Vinnie Myers, who I went road tripping it with my best friend Anita. And we drove to Maryland in one day there and back. And that was quite the adventure, I will say. But again, he has an amazing practice and tattoo shop where literally women come from around the world. And that's a really interesting video. So he really helps you get back together again. So check that video out. It's quite interesting. And then just in this last slide or two, I just want to share that when I had turned 49, I say I was suffering in silence because I was actually going through menopause, premenopause, and I didn't even know it. And, I couldn't lose weight. And frankly, that went on for 5 years later. And, finally now I could lose weight and I'm feeling much better. But, I always say menopause, we kind of just suffer in silence. We don't really know what it is, at least I didn't. And Dr. Polakov is an amazing West Coast physician. She has an upcoming webinar in menopause towards the end of the month, and you could click there to register. And I would just say that even if you're not going through menopause, you're already gone through menopause, she has an amazing practice and she's dedicated her life to women's health and wellness. And she's just an amazing person to listen to. And I think that anyone just attending that would benefit. She always has so much great information to share. And then I just want to say on the last slide or two, thank you, so much to Cher and Gwen and Rita and all of you who have been listening. I hope this has been informative. And I just say, it is through gaining knowledge and knowing we have choices that we are in control in great part. And this is how we own our diagnosis and not let it own us. And I'm wishing everybody again a happy and healthy new year. And my last favorite quote I'm going to leave you with is, there are 2 ways of spreading light: to be the candle or the mirror that reflects it.